the editorial board member for several international journals, and also he published 3 books in mathematics and computing, applied mathematics and scientific computing, advanced in fluid dynamics. So these are all a brief, biodata or introduction of Dr. Rushi. So he published more than 100 research papers. That's why we invited to deliver a lecture on research ethics. Okay, thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation in spite of your busy schedule. Right. So now I invite Dr. P. Kumar to give you your lecture.
So thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your nice introduction. Indeed, I must be thankful and honored to deliver a lecture for this students in prestigious university. So I'd like to thank Professor B. Munswamy Garu, Professor and Head, Department of Statistics, Andhra University, for inviting me to give a talk on this topic, in particular research ethics, to the postgraduate students. Indeed, it is a very brief notice, but in spite of that, I handled the course research methodology for our MSc students. So I thought I can able to give the talk on this topic. So nowadays, research is one of the vital component, and you know the many ranked universities, they are doing research at undergraduate level itself. Is it, sir? I'm audible, sir? Is it fine?
Yeah, you are audible, sir. Fine, no problem.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My overall, I just want to say research is a vital component in any university or in the students' profile. So in India, we are starting the research at PG level. So now we are also concentrating the research at undergraduate level. So in particular, in today's topic, as sir given me, I saw the syllabus. Majorly, it consists of 3 components. One for research ethics, and one more is based on literature review, and one more is on plagiarism tools. So maybe I can share 3 different topics with half an hour duration or so. Maybe it is an evening lecture, and we are all listening now with the sophisticated online tools are available. We can interact anybody from anywhere in the world. So we all know we faced difficult situations from 1920, and therefore we all faced COVID-19 has taught us many lessons. So in spite of that, there are some advancements, like we are familiar with online tools. So we can, previously we are all familiar only to attend physical conversations. There are more advantages when you interact physically, but due to certain limitations of time and travel and other things, nowadays the people are using blended mode and online mode for meetings and other things. So this is one of the advantage for us who it is familiar with all the students and faculty. So my first talk is based on research ethics. So whenever you talk about research, concept involved ethics. So maybe in this slide, I am going to cover the contents. What exactly the research ethics? What is called scientific research? What is called social versus clinical research? So why we can concern with research ethics? And what is the development and evaluation of research ethics? What are the rules and regulations or code of conduct for the international landscape? Whenever we talk about research, it is global perspective. We are publishing the paper in journals. So even the journal belongs to national or international, the audience or the people who look your work are global audience. So therefore, the ethics plays a vital role. So just see some more contents I may cover is research ethics, policy and regulations. So in particular here, there are some regulations related to South African landscape. You can have every country has their own landscape also. What members of the research ethics committee look for and how to submit a proposal for ethical clearance. And so what is ethics? What is research? What exactly is research ethics? Just here he mentioned what is research, what is ethics. You just see the ethics is defined as a discipline dealing with what proper course of action for man. This is given in 1941, Aristotle defined. You all know in our day-to-day life also we use the word ethics. So every individual, every human being, as a family, as an individual, as a responsible person in the society, we have to have certain ethics, certain guidelines. So ethics is a branch of philosophy that looks at what is good and what is bad, what is correct and what is wrong. So is that we are doing the things in our day-to-day life or in research in an ethical way, in a proper way. So a system of obligation that we have towards others. So also known as the moral philosophy. It involves systemizing, defining, and recommending the concepts of right and wrong behavior. So mostly ethics is concerned which talks about what is right, what is wrong. So a student or a study of principles guiding the good of the individual within the context of social interactions and the community. So when you talk about ethics, you can talk about individual ethics or the community ethics or the society ethics. In particular, here we talk about publication ethics and what is to be correct in research, in particular in research ethics. So ethics is defined as three types: meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. So here ethics is defined as a theoretical enterprise. So here we are saying the ethics is a branch of analytic philosophy that explores the status, foundations, and scope of moral values and its properties and words. So this is taken from this source. So this is called meta-ethics. The normative ethics addresses the questions of what ought to be done. So normative ethical theorists like Socrates and Bentham. So these provide the action, guides and codes. Applied ethics, domain specific, whether it is engineering domain or in business or in biomedical. So what way you are talking about this ethics? We move on to ethics evaluation. Basically, it started from Aristotle in 322 BC, proposed a theory of virtue, and Socrates followed, and Siddhartha. You just see it is in chronological order mentioned. Starting from 384 to 322 BC, from Aristotle, Socrates, Siddhartha, Gautama, and Kant. The rightness of an action is determined by the character of the principle that a person chooses to act upon. So just the ethics has a great history. It started a long years ago. So then continued the Bentham. He has a 1781, the principle of utility. It disapproves or approves of every action according to the tendency to augment or diminish happiness. And followed by Mahatma Gandhi. You all know Mahatma Gandhi taught us a great ethics, so non-violence and truth. These are the things. So Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, 1918 to 2013, and Fanon, 1925 to 1961, the African philosophy of humanness. So we have given a great models who have followed the ethics and get their life itself is a role model to the other. You just see the key features of the scientific research. So, you know, in scientific research, there are multiple components. Whether a journal also or your findings have these features. One is called generalizability of findings. If someone is new to the research, you must know these concepts. If you are writing a research paper or the research project, you must keep in mind whether your scientific research have these key components, key features. So the first one we say here, generalizability of findings. So whether your findings can be generalized. Someone says, I used the formula and got the solution. That is, you have used, but not able to, your findings may not be generalized. So a particular case may not be generalized, it can be applicable. So therefore, generalizability of findings is one of the key feature. So the extent to which the sample used in the research project reflects the broader population of interest. So it is, then only it is called generalizable. Similarly, the scientific rigor. So you just say, I have written something and is it possible to publish? Then immediately the editorial board or they may not find any important findings or the rigor is missing, they will say. So the scientific rigor. Truth is accepted if there is sufficient evidence to support claims made through the research process. So such claims have to withstand the security of repeated testing. So the first important thing is whether in your research or in the project, whether scientific rigor is involved. And universality and objectivity. Most of the time we can say whenever you talk about certain research problem or research project, first thing is what is your objective? What is the research gap? What is exist in the literature? What is still to be explored? What is still not done? So you have to have a research question and you have to have the objective of your research. So hence the universality and objectivity is one of the key features of your scientific research. So explicit rules and systematic procedures. So research should be designed in a manner that allows any competent researchers to conduct a similar study and generate the same findings. So therefore, this is one of the very important point and originality of your research work. So if you are presenting your findings, the reviewer or the board members or the committee may check that whether the findings are original. What is the contribution of your work? What is you have done in your project? What is new in this work? So these are the questions you have to question yourself when you are doing some research. What is the originality of research work? So therefore, if it is not original, it may be treated as plagiarized, or we call it as it may not comes under your work comes under ethics. So the originality of research work, original ideas backed with appropriate evidence. That's why if you say some finding, this is my findings, or this is my output, or this is my result, you have to say clearly how to justify, how to validate that result. So original ideas backed with appropriate evidence in a clear, logical, convincing manner that gives a critical and analytical thinking, that leads to a critical and analytical thinking. So therefore, the four important features of a scientific research involves a scientific rigor, objectivity is required, generalizability of your findings, originality of your research work. So you have to keep in mind these key important points. So therefore, we are talking about, as of now, what is called research, and what is ethics, and what is called research ethics. These are the things we have so far discussed. Now you just see, before moving on to the next slide, I just mentioned the key features of the scientific research. Now, therefore, the research ethics means a code of guidelines on how to conduct a scientific research in a morally acceptable way. So whatever your research findings, that can be accepted by others in a moral way. The principles and standards that help the researchers to uphold the value and standards of knowledge construction. So research ultimately gives a new knowledge. It helps a creation of knowledge. Hence, we use this knowledge creation or knowledge construction that may be followed based on certain principles and standards, certain code of guidelines. So that is called research ethics. So you just see here the ethical considerations in the research process. So there are 6 stages of research. The first stage, we have conceptualization and design of the study. Most of you are doing your project component, so maybe you are familiar with the research process. Is it I'm audible, sir? Yeah, the first point I mentioned is conceptualization and design of the study. Whether it has a scientific merit, it identifies the risks and ways to mitigate the problem. So first you have to design the problem, and when participants are recruited, the process of informed consent, right to privacy. So privacy is another constraint when you are handling about data, or you are handling involved with humans, or you are involved with animals in your research and so on. So during the intervention or measurement procedure, to which participants are subjected to risk. So management of risk. So in the release of results obtained and protection of confidentiality and anonymity. Sometimes in review process also, you have a double blind review we follow. So after the release of results, how this ensure that the participants and communities involved in the research benefit. Ultimately, the process of research will benefit to the society, will benefit to the, you all know, nowadays we have sophisticated equipments and other infrastructure. All these are possible only because of the research. So you just look at the points. So another way of looking at research ethics is by looking at unethical research conduct. So as of now, we mentioned ethics, it means a moral. So many of our religious concepts taught us how to be moral. So therefore, another way of looking the research, so unethical research conduct. So you just see here issues of full disclosure. So withholding the information about the aim of the study, misleading the participants about the risk inherent in participating in the study. You are involving some people, but you are misguiding them regarding their participation in the research. Plagiarism. So you are taking some content, available content, and used in your study. That is comes under plagiarism. Maybe in our in this lecture, I may be saying what are the tools available to detect plagiarism and how to avoid plagiarism. This I will maybe discussing at the end. Conducting the research that does not have a scientific base. So whether sometimes we talk about ill-formed problem statement, well-posed, ill-formed. So therefore, if your problems choosing itself is wrong, then obviously your does not have any scientific base. Lack of objectivity. So as I already mentioned, when you are doing some research, first you have to have a research person and what is the objective. And integrity in the design and conduct of research. Not identifying the methodological constraints of the study that determine the validity of the findings. Misinterpretation of the results. So suppose you are showing certain results through the tables or through visualization, and obviously you are giving some interpretation of the results. So that interpretation must be accurate or appropriate. So misinterpretation is unethical. Not providing the details of theories. If you are giving certain output, it has to follow certain rules or certain theories, the standard theories and methods that might be relevant in the interpretation of research findings. Or you are saying fabrication or falsification of data is again comes under unethical research conduct. Not following the appropriate authorship is also comes under unethical research. So who are involved in research may be duly cited, and accordingly the author, the first author, second author, corresponding author, all this usually first author will be the student and corresponding author will be the guide, who is the mentor, who is giving direction to for your research. They are called corresponding author. Who are collaborated with you and who are have contributed in a justifiable way, they are called the remaining authors. So not following the appropriate authorship is also unethical. So not respecting the right to privacy. So this I already we mentioned, not respecting the right to anonymity and confidentiality. Not respecting right of vulnerable groups like children, mentally handicapped individuals, the aged persons or prisoners or illiterate, those with low social status. So not having due consideration for the environment. So whenever you do certain research, you have to keep in mind the due consideration for the environment. So all these components comes under the unethical research conduct. So we're moving on to fundamentally research ethics or the respect and justice. So basically a way of conducting the research enterprise such that there are three fundamental principles we have to follow. That is called respect and beneficence and justice. These three must you have to keep in mind, and ethical research must conform with the national and international accords and prescripts. So the rules and regulations of national and international accords one has to follow. Now, you just see the concept here. Yeah, we already talked about this. Is it the slide visible? I'm trying to move the cursor.
Visible, sir.
Yeah, sir, in the desktop, whether some icon is presenting, how to move that? Yeah. It's moving up and down, but to close that. Sorry. Yeah, just there are some options also available to annotate. In the principles of research ethics are shown in this. So the risk and benefits should be distributed in equitable manner when recruiting participants. And you have to respect for sponsor of research, because sometimes your project is supported by the sponsoring agency. You have to have a due respect and respect for communities where participants come from, respect for knowledge and academic community, and you have the benefits must be weighted against potential risk that a person might have by participation in this. So research should only be justified if it conduct and result will be of benefit to the participants. How the community will benefit should be the clear from the research protocol. That's why majority of the end findings, one has to ask what way these findings are useful to the society, are useful to the development of new things. So the researcher is responsible for the mental, physical, and social well-being of the participant through the participation in the study. And here you just see there are someone can help me how to move this cursor on the top? Yeah, here we are already in the initial slide. I mentioned what are the concepts related to scientific research. The scientific research is again classified into two types. One is called clinical and social. So what is the definition of clinical research? Social research. So clinical research, it means a research study intended to test safety, quantity, effectiveness of new and or old medicines or medical devices or treatment options for human participants. That's where clinical research is defined. A social research, a systematic recording and analysis of data that may lead to generalizable principles and theories which result in prediction and possible management of behavior and events in the society. So therefore, whether your research comes under clinical research or social research, what are the activities? So here in clinical research, you may be able to find some tissues or surgical inventions or fluids or chemical substances or observations or experimental activities one has to do. But in social research, you have a review of literature, review of data, review or interview and focus group, observations and survey and testing etc. The phases is there are 4 phases in clinical research. Here more or less we have 8 phases in social research. So there are phase 1 and up to phase 4. The clinical research is a invention of a new drug, invention of a vaccine or medical device. You all know during the COVID time, the government has given a highest priority to invent the new vaccine for the COVID. So therefore, our Indian scientists also played a vital role in inventing the new vaccine for the COVID. So therefore, after the vaccine only, we are all freely. So therefore, the phase 1 is a new drug or the vaccine or the medical device is tested in a small group of healthy persons for the very first time. So the aim is to determine the general safety, the correct dosage and negative effects. And phase 2 in clinical trial is the new drug vaccine or medical device in a larger group. First applied for a smaller group, then go to the hundreds of people, then testing to several thousands of people, then clinical trials done to several thousand people. After the new drug or the new vaccine or the new medicine has been registered, and therefore it has go to licensed, and therefore it can go for the sale according to the medical council. In social research, you have to have most of your comes under social research. It may be a problem identification, problem definition, and development of a theory framework, hypothesis, literature review, hypothesis formulation, and literature review, research design, data collection, data analysis. Based on analysis, you have to formulate the report writing and dissemination of findings. So social research have 8 phases. Clinical trials have 4 phases. And why the research is important? What way we can go ahead with the research? It is professional responsibility to avoid the reputational damage. Research can be harmful to participants, or it should not be harmful to researchers or institutions or research communities. And also to avoid litigation. So suppose you are doing something related to ethics or biosafety or other things, it should not have some litigation. So therefore, you have to be concerned with the participants, concerned with the institution, concerned with the community, and concerned you do with the professional responsibility and avoid litigation. And this is the evolution of regulations. So the regulations started in 1900 and it evolved up to 1990. So International Conference on how these guidelines for the human experimentation, because in certain clinical trials, humans are involved. That's why what are the code of conduct you can follow to invent certain clinical trials. These are the chronological order development. And you just see in the Nuremberg Research Ethics Code, there are 23 people were tried, 20 doctors and 3 administrators. 7 were sentenced to death by hanging. 9 were given prison terms and 7 were fined not guilty. In one of the research ethics, this is happened. So that's why this is shown. So therefore, the judgment by the war crimes and tribunal and the Nuremberg, Germany laid down the 10 stands to which physicians must conform when carrying out experiments on human subjects. Therefore, now there are certain code of conduct, guidelines or
ఎంత రికార్డ్ అయింది చూడసలు ఎన్ స్ట్రీమ్ నాకు 34 minutes రికార్డ్ అయింది. ఎంత రికార్డ్ అయింది చూడండి సార్. ఓపెన్ చేసి
ఎర్రర్ అక్కడ అంట.